Today we're talking about how you can take control and go fully manual with your camera so you can get exactly what you want out of your photos and take them to the next level. Alright, let's talk shutter speed, aperture, ISO. What do they do and how do you use them if you're doing photography? Let's take a second compared to this mug of coffee. How do you like your coffee? Personally, I like mine black, but let's say you like yours with cream and sugar. We're going to take this black coffee mug and we're going to call that the shutter speed. Now what happens when you add cream to black coffee? It's not as dark. Well, the same thing happens when you add aperture to shutter speed. Yeah, it's great right now. I mean, you could drink the coffee the way it is if you really want to, but if you really want to balance out that bitterness, there's one thing that we're missing, and that's sugar. So now, when you add ISO to aperture and shutter speed, you have that little bit of sweetness or that little filler to keep things balanced between the other two settings. And just like that, you have the things that can help you enjoy your cup of coffee, that make you feel good, they complement each other, they work together. Who would have ever thought coffee could be so relatable to photography? That's it. Tutorial over. Don't forget to like, comment down below, subscribe. Catch y'all later. Peace out. Not really, it's not the end of the video. But how about let's dive a little deeper on how these three work so now we can get out, put your camera in manual, and just start firing away. Also, fun fact, the little coffee analogy. Yeah, I made it up while making coffee. What a coincidence. But one day I was making coffee and I'm like, you know what? This makes sense. And it's great because everyone who has ever asked me tips on taking photos, I give them this analogy and they're like, wow, this has helped me so much in the beginning. Thank you. Which, by the way, if it helps you too, you're welcome. So, what is shutter speed? Shutter speed covers so many different aspects of photography, and it all has to do with movement and what is going on with what you're trying to capture. Let's say you have a friend that's, getting ready to go and ollie off of a stair set, and you just want to snag a photo of them in midair and just freeze them there, like as if time just stopped. You would set your shutter speed to a faster speed, so that way when you go to shoot the photo, that shutter is opening and closing as fast as you need to, so you don't have any motion blur. Because shutter speed is exactly what it sounds like. It is the speed of the shutter that opens and closes every time you hit that shutter button when you're going to take a photo. For example, here's a photo of me jumping in my backyard. This photo was shot at 1/320 or 320th of a second. As you can see, it's tack sharp, there's no motion blur going on, and it's ready to go. Now what happens when you slow down that shutter speed? For example, like a 40th of a second. Well, in this photo, as you can see, there's tons of motion blur going on. You can see the motion of my legs on how they were looking when I was jumping, and anything else that was really moving in the photo isn't tack sharp. Or let's say you're trying to take a photo of a waterfall and you want that water to look super soft and super milky-like as it's just flowing. Well, here's an example of a photo that I took with my shutter speed set at 5 seconds. And because my shutter's staying open for 5 seconds, during that 5 seconds, my camera is constantly capturing that information. It's constantly capturing the motion of the water as it's falling off the cliff, this little hill, if you will. And then after that 5 seconds, bam, shutter down, and boom, you got yourself some tasty waterfalls. Now keep in mind, for really slow shutter speeds, you're gonna need something like a tripod, because even just the slightest little bit of just shake with your hand, you're gonna cause some type of blur because of how long the shutter's staying open. Not saying you're gonna need a tripod for shooting something as low as maybe a 30th of a second or maybe even a 25th of a second, but for those really slow shutter speeds, you're definitely gonna need a tripod. Now, aperture, also known as f-stop, controls two different things in photography. It controls how much natural light is coming in through your lens, so you can have more light, so you can have faster shutter speeds, but it also controls your depth of field, so you can change what's going on in your background or your foreground. Because inside of your lens there's an iris, and the lower the f-stop number you have, the more wide that iris becomes, and it's bringing in more light through your lens. So when more light is coming into your lens, you can also have a faster shutter speed, but you'll also have a more shallow depth of field. For example, here's a photo of me that was shot at f2. As you can see, I'm tack sharp, but the background is all blurred out, and this background blur is called bokeh. Another example of having shallow depth of field is having bokeh but in the foreground. For example, here's a photo of a knife that I shot at f4. You can see that there's bokeh going on in the foreground by looking at the bowl, but you can also see that there's bokeh going on in the background as well. Now what happens when you bring up the f-stop number? Well, the iris in your lens becomes smaller and not a lot of light is able to get through your lens, so now you're going to have to bring down your shutter speed in order to compensate and balance out your exposure. This also means that you're going to have a deeper depth of field, so you won't have as much bokeh or background blur. There's going to be more going on in the photo. There's going to be more detail that you're capturing. For an example, here's another photo of me that was shot at f11. Here you you can see that I'm tack sharp, but you can also see that there's more going on in the photo. You can see more detail behind me. You can see more detail within the leaves, within the fence. A good example you would use this for is landscape photography, because you're trying to capture as much detail as you can in such a vast open area. Now let's say you're somewhere and you have your shutter speed right where you need it, but then you also have your aperture is as wide open as your lens will let you have it, and you just need just a little bit of extra light to just balance everything out. This is where ISO comes in. Now going back to the coffee analogy, we have shutter speed, which is black coffee. We have aperture, which is cream. Now we have sugar. What happens when you add too much sugar to your coffee? It becomes too sweet or perhaps even grainy. You know, kind of like how you go to your favorite coffee shop and you order a nice coffee and they say, well, how would you like that? And then you say, well, I'd like some cream and sugar. So then they go and they decide to grab a bag of sugar and then just dump it into the cup of coffee. Then you put your straw in there and then it feels like you're just sucking up sand, and it's not a good time. And this is what happens as you bump up each increment of your ISO. You're adding grain or more image noise to your photos. Why does this happen? Well, inside of your camera there's a sensor, and this sensor's job is to help capture your images, and when you increase your ISO, you're increasing the sensitivity of this sensor to the light. And, well, by increasing this sensitivity, you're basically just adding fake light. And as you add more of this fake light, if you will, your sensor's becoming more sensitive, so you end up with this thing that's called image noise. It'll become more pixelated and your image will become worse. And this is one of the reasons why higher-end cameras are so expensive, because they can handle higher ISO without introducing image noise. So my best advice to you guys is to learn these settings the best that you can, really. Learn them the best that you can, because then when you're out in the field and you see something you want to get a shot of and you don't want to miss that shot, you can just bring up your camera and be like, you know, I just want to have my shutter speed set to this, and I want my aperture set to this, and I might need to bump up my ISO a little bit, and then bam, you got your shot, and then you can just be on your way. But anyways, I hope this video helped you guys out. If you like this video, just straight up destroy that like button. It makes a huge difference. Hit up that comment section below, because I'd love to talk with you guys and converse. And of course, if you have not yet, you should definitely subscribe. Catch you guys in the next video. Peace!